in. And as Michael pointed out on Sunday in his awesome talk on Vimalakirti, this is kind of like the culmination. The whole thing's leading up to this big kind of exposition of non-duality, and something that is really rare in Buddhism. You don't go around finding a bunch of Buddhist sutras talking about non-duality very much. Mainly they're talking about emptiness and so on, but here is the big example of Buddhism just diving in and talking about this fascinating concept, non-duality, or Advaita, as we call it in Sanskrit. So let's just ourselves dive right in tonight. We're going to start out with a nice hour of meditation as usual, and the meditation will be thematically connected with this chapter on non-duality. And then afterwards, we'll have a little chat about it. So let's go with the meditation. Let's just begin. Bodhisattvas, sit down in your Buddha posture, the posture that expresses your innate Buddhahood, posture that is both upright and relaxed. Remembering that we can all see you moving around, fidgeting, drinking your coffee, doing other stuff. But what we want is meditation. So let's sit as meditators and begin to tune into the deep belly breathing. So we're actually on purpose breathing in a kind of effortful manner where the belly expands way out on the in-breath, shrinks way back on the out-breath, and we are contacting the body sensation of breathing in, that feeling in the belly on the in-breath, and then on the out-breath, that feeling of contraction in the belly. So let's just begin there with this simple shamatha with an object, contacting body sensations of breathing. And it's best if you can, if you're going with body sensations of breathing as your object, you're feeling it in your whole body. The belly especially, but you can feel it in your nose and face, you can feel it in your throat, you can feel your chest expanding and contracting, even the three-dimensional region around the belly, the sides above your hips, the areas around the kidneys, in the back of the belly. You're feeling that whole area expanding and contracting with each breath. Now, because this is shamatha with an object, I'm giving you this object of the body sensations of breathing. But of course, you could use any object that works for you. If you have instead a internal sound object like a mantra or a nada sound that you love to focus on, then that's a perfectly fine concentration object. If you have a visualization that you're used to doing, and that brings you into tremendous clarity and focus, then do that visualization. Or if there's any other method you have of coming into both a very relaxed place and also a very, very concentrated, bright, clear place, then do that now. feeling the energy of the breath in the body. How that in-breath is enlivening, clarifying, brightening, and it feels really good. Breathing just feels fabulous. The body loves it. And if you are remaining nice and still, very relaxed, very open, you can sense that pleasantness in the body, the kind of vibratory, undulatory, buzzy, tingly, warm, fuzzy aliveness that comes with breathing. And if that's easier to contact, then the body sensations of breathing go with that, because that will get stronger as you continue to do the deep belly breathing. So we're enjoying this breath, we're relaxing with each breath, and we're also becoming clearer and more vivid with each breath. And as you're doing this, I'd like you to allow your forehead, your eyebrows to relax, your temples to release and let go, your eye muscles, your eyelids, all around the eyes, relaxing and opening, the eyes becoming completely relaxed, totally unfocused and still. Remembering we do not need our eyeglasses because we're not even using our eyes in this meditation in any way. Allowing your cheeks, your mouth, your lips, your face to relax, your jaw to open enough that the teeth are not touching, and your tongue to just be floating like a lotus on a pond in your mouth. And notice as your entire face and head release and relax and let go, that each of those breaths becomes deeper, more satisfying, more open. The entire body opens and releases even more. You settle into a kind of profound and liberating stillness. The stillness of a fully awakened Buddha. The stillness of the fully awakened Buddha within you. And that clear, bright, utterly vivid, crisp awakeness. Now allowing your throat and your neck and your shoulders to release and relax and let go. Allowing your voice, if you were talking, your voice would deepen as your throat relaxes, your shoulders release. Then your arms and hands become completely limp and loose and relaxed. Which allows the entire body and mind, the body-mind system, to drop even more deeply into relief and relaxation and letting go. Noticing that as you're relaxing, you're also energizing. There's that feeling of pleasant, buzzy energy in the body that's growing larger. And that becomes a very powerful object itself to focus on, something you can clearly concentrate on that takes you deeper into relaxed, clear awakeness. Remember, the word Buddha just means the person who's awake. To be Buddha is to be awake. So this is all about awakeness, bright, clear awareness. Now allow your torso in the front, on the sides, the back, all that to release and relax and let go. And notice that it just continues to release and open, and even your face and your throat and your shoulders and your arms and your hands release and open more completely and more totally and more significantly. as you feel, I mean, really feel, a deep, utterly transcendental opening, profoundly aware, profoundly at rest, while tremendously energized. Noticing even your hips are opening, your thighs, the big muscles all through the thighs relaxing and releasing and opening, the knees and the calves, the ankles, the feet, the toes, just letting go. And that little bit of letting go, again, boom, impacts the whole body and mind, dropping the entire system even more deeply into relaxed openness, dropping the body and mind even more deeply into a full experience of peaceful, bright, clear collectedness and profound integration, a kind of sense of total unification of all the constituent parts of each aspect of every enfolded part of the many beings within, feeling the self coming together and becoming bright and awake. A sense of perfect balance between expansion and contraction, like a sun, where there's the gravitational collection, collecting together, pulling together, unification, integration, this kind of perfect sense of collectedness, balanced with all that energy, all that brightness, all that beautiful Shakti pouring outward. And just feeling that balance between coming together and radiating outward. All right, Bodhisattvas, now drop your focus object, whatever it may be, and instead allow the mind to just blossom open, just to fall open like a perfectly ready lotus flower, no effort at all. To just be completely wide open with no object of any kind. You're not focusing in any way. Instead, if the flower starts to close again, it grabs onto a thought, just relax and let the flower open and the thought to fly away. If the mind begins to grab on to any other thing, a feeling, an urge, an idea, an external sound, anything, if it starts to close around that, just allow it to relax and open, to blossom fully, just completely at ease. Just as the body rests, the mind can rest wide open. The most fascinating thing is this very restful state of the mind is tremendously energized. It's tremendously vivid and bright and clear. It's not dull or sleepy or muddy. It's awake. Awake and simply resting in itself with no object. Very interesting in the sutra, where the Bodhisattva Bhagavad-jyotis says, distraction and attention are two. When there is no distraction, there will be no attention, no mentation, and no mental intensity. Thus, the absence of mental intensity is the entrance into non-duality. Notice that this part of the meditation, the dropping the ball part of the meditation, we're letting go of the ideas of attention and distraction and simply resting in wide openness. And each time that wide openness begins to close, just relax, let it open again. And notice that the closing is a habit, and it's a habit of tension in the mind. What the sutra is calling mental intensity. So we just let go of that mental intensity, that tension, that tightness, that grabbing in the mind, and relax and just let it be wide open. If there's any struggle occurring, let go of the struggle. It's impossible to struggle to stay relaxed. Instead, we let go of the struggle and relax. If there's any sense of trying to get it right, just drop getting it right. Because getting it right includes the idea of getting it wrong. Instead, we're just going to relax without these dualistic notions. Notice if the mind, again, is grabbing onto anything, if there's mental intensity, tightening, gripping, grasping, just relax that. And the Bodhisattva with this great name, Animisha, never blinking, says that grasping and non-grasping are two. What is not grasped is not perceived. What is not perceived is neither presumed nor repudiated. Thus, the inaction and non-involvement of all things is the entryway into non-duality. So we're not grasping onto anything, but we're also noticing, we're letting go of this idea of even grasping versus non-grasping. We're non-involved. It's a total relaxation, just non-involvement. It's the entryway into the Dharma door of non-duality. Every once in a while, as you're doing this, you'll notice that involvement with sound drops away, involvement with the body drops away, involvement with thought drops away. And there's just a kind of open, clear awareness involved with nothing at all except perhaps awareness itself. And then maybe things all snap back or just the habits re-arise, but there can be these moments of just bright, clear, natural mind. If you find yourself lost in thought or lost in even meditating on an object, just come back to shamatha with an object, focus your mind again, raise the energy level again till you feel ready to just open back into this contentless awareness. You can always fall back on the relaxation and concentration to get your mind stable enough and prepared to just be in this awakening kind of place. It's always ready in there. It's always awake under all conditions. And sometimes we just need to clear the mud out of the waters by focusing the mind. Good. Now again, feel free to stay there, working on just either focusing your mind with an object or just letting go and relaxing into bright, clear awareness. Moving forward, allow the mind to re-engage just a little bit and notice any idea of self, any idea of me or mine, and notice any idea of things that are not me and not mine. So if you feel your body, maybe there's a sense that that's me, and then you hear a car outside and that's not me, or the feeling of the shirt or clothes on your skin and you think that's mine, and you hear a bird outside, that's not mine. There's this possessiveness and identification attached to everything. But I want you to just notice that you can drop that. And notice that that sense of me and mine, not mine, is itself empty, is itself void. That is completely, simply openness and awakeness. And that letting go, seeing no difference between mine and not mine, me and not me, seeing those equivalent, that is a Dharma door to non-duality. According to the Bodhisattva Sri Ganda, if there's no presumption of self, there will be no possessiveness. So we let go of the idea of me and mine, and we let go of the idea of not me and not mine, possession and non-possession, and simply relax into non-duality. Anytime you notice that sense of me and mine, or not me and not mine arising, notice its emptiness. Come back to openness. Good. Now notice that body sensations arise from nothing and return to nothing. And that any sense of a body at all is completely void, is empty. And that emptiness itself arises as body sensation. Let go of the reification of the body and the idea that it's solid and well defined, and notice its nebulosity, its disappearingness, its falling apartness, the fact that it is there and not there, like a dream, vanishing in each moment. Notice its emptiness. It's not just empty because, of course, it's also form. But we're so used to seeing or feeling or assuming the form part that noticing the indescribable voidness of the body is powerful. Good. Now allow awareness to notice that thoughts too are arising from nothing and disappearing back into nothing. That thought itself, mental construction, conceptualization, words in the head, ideas in the mind, are completely and utterly void. They are disappearing, they are vanishing like dreams. There but not there, phantasms, lightning in clouds. Notice that empty, yet incredibly awake nature of thought. Notice the sense of doing something at all in the meditation, and feel how that is not any different than the sense of not doing something. And how when it feels like you're not doing anything at all, that is not different from doing. And that this dualism of doing versus non-doing is completely empty. Is there doing or not doing? Or is that distinction completely void? Notice if there's any sense of anything happening versus nothing happening. And recognize that that distinction is completely empty. Now notice bodhisattvas, that awareness itself is not different than emptiness. Awareness itself, the bright, clear, crisp, clean, vivid, vibrating awakeness is itself empty, void, dreamlike, vanishing, nothing to hold on to. And now Bodhisattva is noticing that the difference between meditating and non-meditating is utterly void. We appear to end the meditation for this evening, allowing ourselves to gradually orient to the room around us and feel free to move and stretch. Non-duality is fascinating in a lot of ways. One of which is that just like the concept of infinity, there can be larger infinities than other infinities. In the same way, there can be larger or more significant non-dualities than other non-dualities. And all of them are interesting. It's just powerful to notice that there are some pretty mundane non-dualities, like we might think that the color white is the opposite of the color black. That's a very mundane dualism, right? They're opposites, black versus white versus black, in just the sense of like the color. And yet you'll notice that this is, of course, completely a mental construction. One of the first things they teach us as children is opposites. An even more mundane one that makes less sense than almost any dualism is the dualism between cats and dogs, right? Cats are the opposite of dogs, as far as we're taught that as kids in our culture, right? Couldn't be anything more different than cats and dogs. And obviously, if you compare either of those things to a mushroom or a paramecium, their dogs and cats are practically the same thing, hardly opposite at all. But still, there are these dualisms out in the world that are very mundane and yet completely fabricated. We're making them up. There's no actual opposition between the color white and the color black. There's no opposition, obviously, between dogs and cats. It's just some categorization thing the mind loves to do. And so it's kind of the initial sense of non-duality is sort of this basic idea that, hey, you could let go of some of those and it would remove a lot of the sense of conflict, but also the sense of structure of how we're putting the world together. But then there are some, slightly more significant dualities in terms of human experience that are a little harder to let go of, but maybe worth more to let go of, or their impact on our lives is more significant, such as we did last week, like inside versus outside, the sense of inside versus outside. Probably there's been a sense of inside versus outside since single-celled organisms, right? What's inside the membrane versus outside, what's poison versus nutrition. That kind of really basic duality between inside and outside is really significant and powerful to explore and powerful to deconstruct, right? You can't ever find the true boundary because there isn't one. You can't ever really find where inside ends and outside begins or vice versa. And exploring that, but whether intellectually as an analytical meditation or just in your sense of inside and outside, however you explore it, it will fall apart and drop away and show its emptiness, which we can also, in this case, describe as its non-duality. And so that's a little more significant. It starts to break down the boundaries. And you take a practice like Tonglen or something, where you're taking in all the difficult material of the world and pushing out all the wonderful joy to the exterior. It's meant to break down that sense of inside and outside pretty drastically and to collapse that dualism. And it begins to open our experience. Wow, maybe there's not such a sense of us versus them or so much to fight about. And again, an even deeper one is, the sense of me versus the world, me versus everything else, I versus everything else. And again, you can't really, if you examine that analytically or you just feel into it, you can't find a real boundary there. That dualism is very significant for human beings, and it's very significant to drop, to let go of me and mine, the presumption of me and mine, as the Bodhisattva says, and just let go. And notice that when it's not me versus them or self versus world, there are no enemies and there's nothing to push against. There's no one to fight, and it just drops away, right? And so one by one, as we're letting go of this sort of like less significant seeming dualisms and then more significant, and then dropping away, even with the dualism of me versus the world, gets much more profound. The sense of the boundaries, the artificial, constructed, Lakshana type boundaries of the mind, of awareness dropping away into a vaster and vaster field of openness. And then an even more significant one is the sense of world versus void, like me and the world and everything. So we've dropped that dualism. Now we've got me and the world as one non-dual, non-thing. And we contrast that with voidness. We contrast that with complete emptiness. Right? There's nothing, there's cessation, there's void, and then there's everything, me and the world. But of course, as the Heart Sutra says, and as one of the Bodhisattvas reminds us, form and emptiness are one thing. There's no difference, there's no duality there. And so when we see that the idea of emptiness versus form, that itself is this massive construction, this massive dualism, actually inherent in early Buddhism, and then exposed and deconstructed in later Buddhism. And when we drop that, that's very significant, powerful prajna paramita, highest wisdom, or even prajna paramita hridaya, the heart of highest wisdom kind of thing to notice, right? That even something versus nothing, the world versus voidness, is itself it's an artificial dualism that we can just drop. So this whole idea of non-duality is so powerful, and part of its power is it applies at many levels, and we can start at any place in there, but we just gradually let go of larger and larger, deeper and deeper, more and more significant dualisms and arrive at, or let's say notice, more and more freedom and space, and eventually highest awakening, right? Kind of like total non-dualism. So with that as an extremely brief talk on non-duality, let's have some questions from you guys and gals in a totally non-dualistic, non-gendered sense.
I have a question.
Yep.
I noticed that, or I wonder, how would you recommend working with, at a certain point tonight in the sit, there's, when we were dealing with, it's like the sensations of the body being empty, arise from nowhere, go to nowhere. When I found that at a certain point, there's a kind of a continuity of a sensation, and it doesn't seem to be morphing. It's kind of like changing. It's kind of just like, it feels static. It's difficult to, and I kept telling myself, like, it's empty, it's empty, it's empty. But it's like the sense of me-ness is tethered to that, because it doesn't feel like it's changing over time. I found that a little bit hard to kind of just drop.
Usually, the way I describe it, I'm kind of tying the impermanence and the vanishingness together with the emptiness, because that's often very easy to notice. But of course, even if it's completely static and stable, or let's say seemingly completely static and stable, it is simultaneously empty. It doesn't take a sense of movement or change for there to be emptiness. In fact, it's quite common to just remember one bodhisattva says, seeing is really not seeing. To see is to not see. When you observe even a totally static sensation, it's just, its dreamlike quality, its not there-ness is inherent. It's just visible or noticeable. And if it's not, that's fine. Just understand that it will be, at some point. And the more that you're kind of trying to force it, actually you're reifying it, right? You're giving it a much stronger sense of realness, because now you've engaged it as an enemy, as a thing to push against, right? And the whole idea is there's nothing to push against, right? So as soon as we've got that me trying to do a thing to an it, we've lost it. We've lost it. There is no me, there is no it, there's nothing to do to anything. So you just notice that emptiness. And if you don't, just relax. It's something that's there to see. It's not a thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay? Thanks, Param.
Thanks.
What else is coming up tonight?
That moment for me where I think after the meditation, Michael, was death. And it vanished in the sense that, of course, it is equal. It's not opposite, it's not separate, it's emptiness. This and that, to use that expression. So yeah, something, that there was an equanimity about, so thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Noe. Yeah, it's interesting. Nothing is the opposite of anything, right? The whole idea is a mental construction. And yet we live by that mental construction, right? Our whole world is internally and externally, non-dualistically, internally and externally. There's no real opposites going on ever. And so death is the opposite of life, and fear about death and all that ties into that so strongly, right? And I can't remember if it's in this chapter. I don't think it is, but we could easily have a bodhisattva saying life and death are not dual, right? It appears to be a dualism, but really there's no dualism there. When we transcend ideas of life and death, boom, that's a Dharma door to non-duality. So, it's funny, there can be a way of this that it feels like we're just trying to unconvince ourselves of something or get into this mental trick of being like, well, those two things really aren't different or whatever. And so the way I used to approach this all the time is like, okay, there's this dualism, and we want to kind of get rid of that. And so I'm going to put this other thing on top of it that's like this richer understanding that's sort of going to force down the dualism or talk me out of the dualism. But of course, you've just put more stuff on top. It's just another struggle between non-dual and dual then. And the whole idea is to just throw all that out the window and relax and open and understand, to just drop that constructed argument. It's not a trick. And it's not a special thing you have to convince yourself of. It's simply allowing the mind to open and relax and notice that if it wants to get tense, if it wants to get into intensity, it can start to make all that. But it's just playing a game, right? It's just doing the mind game. And in reality, nothing's been created or destroyed. Nothing has been born or died, right? It's just right? It's just boop. And so that's what we want to work with, is this kind of sense that this is not a big struggle to resolve these dualities somehow. They didn't exist to begin with. We had to work really hard to invent them in our heads as children and set up this fight. And so instead of working really hard to get rid of them, we just relax and notice that either they're not there at all, and they never were, which is one thing we can notice, or that there's no fight. There's nothing to fight. There's no battle in there. Just relax and open and are aware. Right? So, yeah. Thanks, Noe. Nice to see you. Good. So these evenings go really quickly. And before we do our final meditation, our short, brief, not brief as opposed to long, but just brief meditation, let's have Katie talk about donations.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Dana, and meeting in the physical space and meeting online are maybe illusory dualities, but they feel real right now. And we made the decision this month to move out of our space on Folsom Street and to move into a new space once we're allowed to get together again. But we are still paying rent on our old space. And we have a goal as a collective to never put a barrier between anyone and the Dharma. So we want everybody to be able to be in this space, in this Buddha field with us. And in order for that to work, people who are feeling financial abundance or feeling a motivation and a joy to give, because that's what Dana is about. It's about giving from a place of joy and gratitude. So if you're feeling that, if you're so moved, please donate. And if you're not in that place now, don't, but keep coming. And keep in mind that your gift enables us to keep doing what we do. It enables other people to keep coming and hearing the Dharma. And looking forward to seeing you all back here on Sunday for the next chapter of the sutra. Thank you all.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to meditate again for a few minutes. Actually, that was a quick talk. So we're going to meditate for a little longer than we normally do at the end here. And I just want you to go ahead, let's meditate for them. I just want you to let go of all struggle, let go of all fighting, let go of thinking versus not thinking, attention versus distraction, movement versus stillness, doing it right versus doing it wrong. Just drop all that completely. And then let go of dropping it even versus not dropping it. Good. I think I was looking at this book by my friend Lex Hickson, forward by Robert Thurman, talking about the Prajnaparamita Sutra. And I just liked this one phrase I was reading from the sutra. It says, material and mental forms, namarupa, right, are themselves none other than total awakening into Buddhahood. The intrinsic nature of every appearing form and every mode of consciousness is already and always perfect Buddha nature. The simplicity, directness, and totality of universal enlightenment. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.